Thank you, New Day. Thank you, Ron. Thank you all for being here with us on week 5 of our 7-week annual fall series, Unity Awakening. And as you know, this year we've been exploring Unity's foundational teaching of 12 powers of mankind in conjunction with the 7 chakras that come to us from India, looking for comparisons and similarities and seeing how one might reinforce the other. So this is week 5, and we are looking at the throat chakra, Vishuddha, in relation to the spiritual power of power, as taught by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore, and the faculty of zeal, enthusiasm. So when we're talking about the spiritual faculty of power, everything else that I will say about the throat chakra, the 5th chakra, relates to that. And just a word about zeal and enthusiasm. That's the fire. That's the giddy up and go. That's the passion that gets us rolling and moving. And we always want to be aware of how powerful it is, because it's the thing that gets us off the couch and to the gym and gets us out there doing the things that are ours to do, that gives us fire and enthusiasm for the things that we like. And it can also go too far. Have you ever met somebody who is so zealous and enthusiastic about their thing that they are so in your face about their thing and really don't seem to want to hear about your thing, and they're just all about it? Yeah, it gets kind of like, out of my space, please. Or as the scriptures say, the zeal of the Lord has eaten my house. Sometimes we get so excited about our own thing, we burn out. So we have to understand this energy has to be managed with wisdom and compassion. So I found a quote, a Rumi quote that speaks to this. It speaks to all the energies of the throat chakra and to this faculty of zeal. Next slide, please. Raise your words, not your voice. It's rain that makes flowers grow, not thunder. Just take that in. It's so sweet. How many times have you ever been in a conversation or a dialogue that got kind of loud? And then it got louder. And then the fists were pounding on the table. And then you got the text in all caps with these troublesome emojis attached to it. And it's like, what happened? Yes, we are communicating. It's part of the throat chakra's energy. Yes, we are connecting. Okay. But we're not doing so in a meaningful fashion that would produce flowers, that would encourage creativity, that would encourage self-expression. So when we are talking about this thing we call the throat chakra, Vishuddha, what we want to understand is, what does it represent, or the spiritual faculty of power? We're talking about connection. How are we connecting with one another? We're talking about communication. How are we sharing with a larger circle our message and our being? We're talking about our creativity. What are we creating and making and doing in the world? And we're talking about understanding sound and vibration and resonance. How are we feeling and connecting energetically with a group or an organization, or even with ourselves? There's a lot going on there, isn't there? And so if we are gentle and mindful and aware, then we can produce flowers, the things that add richness and beauty to our lives. But if we are coming at our communication and our connection from a point of discord, then all we're doing is making thunder. And it'll make no flowers grow. And that's what we're about today as we talk about the 5th chakra. However, it's interesting to note its position. The 3 lower chakras, we talked about the root chakra, which talks about our origins. We talked about the sacral chakra that talked about our boundaries. We talked about the solar plexus chakras, how we get out in the world and connect. They're all very personal. They all convey energy and thoughts around our physicality. Everything that meets in the heart chakra connects with a point of view of love. As Carl Jung said, when we enter to the energy of the heart chakra, that's where individuation begins. Or as we might say in another way, that's where our enlightenment begins. Or as we might say in Christian terms, that's where the development and discovery of Christ consciousness begins. Because love changes everything. Love heals and transforms. And so when we get to the 3 upper chakras, we're talking about universals. In big picture items, communication, creativity, spirituality, divinity. These are universal that tie and connect us all together in a universal sense. And that first one is, and so when we get to the throat chakra, when we're talking about communication, we're talking about things like public speaking. I could connect just with Caitlin and have a conversation, or I can talk to a lot of people. It's larger. We're talking about our creative endeavors. If we write a song or start a business, we're reaching more people. If we start a movement, we're reaching a lot more people. And so what we're doing is connecting in a larger way. And ostensibly, this should be easy for us, right? We all have a mouth. We all have ways of connecting. We can either write or type or text or, it's interesting as technology changes, how we symbolize writing has to change. The throat chakra also rules our capacity to understand symbols. Very important to understand what symbols mean to us because they say a lot of things. But it doesn't always work out easily. Sometimes we feel this impetus. There's something I need to say. There's something I need to do. And we feel constricted as if we were wearing a tie. And we just can't get our words across. And just kind of as an aside, I realized this morning, not only did I put a noose around my neck, I stuck my fingers in my eyes when I put my contacts in. I took a knife to my throat as I was shaving. It's like, somehow, this is all supposed to help me connect and communicate, articulate a message. I'm not sure how, but when it was done, it's like, okay, I went through a process. I don't have to do that again until maybe tomorrow even. Tomorrow's my day off. I'm not doing any of those tomorrow. Now I'm put myself on. So what happens? Why is it difficult for us to communicate sometimes? Why is it that sometimes that we have to say we can't do, even though we feel some compulsion to do so? It's because somewhere along the way, many of us were party to an experience or a chronic condition that basically said, your words don't count. Your experience doesn't matter. People like you don't get a say. There's no place for those for you here. Anybody ever hear or been party to any of that sort of stuff? And what happens is if we start to believe it or if it just becomes so overwhelming, we stop saying what we need to say. We stop expressing the gifts and the talents we've come here to bring and to share and the grace that we are. We stop realizing that we matter. There's a story in the scriptures, one I think you're familiar with, Hebrew scriptures in Exodus. Moses was born in a very difficult setting. His mother put him in a basket, hoping somebody would find him. He was found by one of the daughters of Pharaoh. He was raised with privilege, had everything you could ever possibly want. And then one day he was out and he saw people being abused, and he was so moved by this violence that he himself was moved to violence, killed an Egyptian, lost his standing in the culture, had to run away and go hide to save his own life. But then one day he was out tending the sheep and he saw a burning bush. And the voice of God in this burning bush said, Moses, I got something I need you to do. Go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. We talk in our world today with this metaphor of the burning bush experience. Many of us have had a burning bush experience of some sort. When we became aware that there was something we had to do, and we resisted it. Or maybe I'm just shamelessly projecting my experience onto you. Something that you knew you were called to do, it on some level you knew was yours to do, and you tried everything to get out of doing it. Moses did. He even said he got in this long argument with God, and many of us have gotten into a similar argument with God. I can't do this. You know I'm not eloquent. Who am I to go talk to? I'm nobody. He's not really looking forward to seeing me, by the way. And we do everything we can to backpedal, to get out of doing what is ours to do. And yet it is ours to do. That voice of spirit within is telling us this is your thing to do. Whether it's to self-express, whether that's to write your song, to bring your creativity forward, to start a business that's going to make a world a better place, to write that book, or to right that wrong, to get involved and say, this isn't right, to make a difference, to lead people to freedom. In whatever setting. That's what Moses ended up doing. And what was the promise given to Moses by God is, I will be there with you. You're not doing this alone. Everything we teach in New Thought is predicated on the understanding of Christ in you, your hope of glory, that internal aspect of the divine that is the truth of who we are. We carry it with us everywhere we go. The choice is, how long will we how long will we keep resisting it and saying, no, no? At what point do we finally break through and just say that, even if our voice quakes, even if we don't feel competent or educated enough or smart enough or rich enough to say that, to do that, to start that? There is something within us that is much bigger than that fear. You see, because the pharaohs in our lives, the ones that really get us into trouble, are not external. Oh, those are there too, don't get me wrong, they're there. Read the newspaper, they're there. But the ones that make the most difference in my life and in your life are the ones in here and in here. The beliefs, the attitudes, the perspectives that we are not good enough, smart enough, that we don't matter, we're not worth it. We keep them alive every single time we give in to them and say, yes, Pharaoh. Yes, Pharaoh. So the quickening, the opening of the throat chakra, the quickening of our spiritual faculty of power is when we say that and just give it a try. So many of us are worried about, well, it won't be perfect, I won't be heard, it won't be good enough. So what? If you don't start, you'll never know. And anybody who's ever encountered or rather accomplished anything that's been significant in their life has had a string of failures along the way, or as we like to call them, practice experiences, and learned from every single one of them to say that and to persist and to be clear and to remember wherever I am, God is. It's interesting, this is tied in directly with the power of prayer. It's part of what we're doing when we quicken our power faculty, when we open up this throat chakra, is we are shifting and moving energy, sound vibrations. We often say, you matter, unless you are moving at double the speed of light, in which case you energy. First service totally did not get that, so thank you. I'm like, what? I worked on that for a long time. Thank you very much. But, so it bombed. I kept at it, so never mind. There's your lesson. I'm modeling what I'm teaching right there. And I'm not a science guy, but so thank you. Hey, if this isn't going to be fun, if our spiritual growth and development isn't going to be fun, I'm not playing. I'm just saying. Because, sometimes it's not really easy, but let's make it fun nonetheless. Prayer. When I was in grad school, one of the papers I wrote was a kind of my own meta-analysis of clinical trials of prayer as a healing tool that were done in medical centers. As I was in a class on science or pseudoscience, or in other words, why would anybody believe something for which there was no empirical proof? Well, come on, I'm a minister. I deal in intangibles. This is my life. And what we found is that by and large, there is statistical significance shown For prayer is a healing tool. And what is prayer? Resonance, vibration, affirmation. We're moving energy. We're thinking about our thoughts. We're affirming what we know to be true, speaking it into manifestation, opening that throat chakra, using our power faculty, married to our zeal faculty, to make a constructive and positive difference in the world. It happens. And we'll say more about that in class on Tuesday night and Thursday morning. It reminds me, too, of the word mantra. You familiar with mantras? They're kind of like affirmations. Mantra comes from two Sanskrit words, man meaning mind, and tra meaning protection. Why would we repeat a mantra? To protect the mind from falling back into the state of condition of groveling to Pharaoh, to affirming that negative tendency. So when we use positive affirmations, we're doing the same thing in spirit as we would be doing if we were making a mantra. Positive affirmation: I am guided by divine wisdom and open to divine ideas. That's a whole different experience to, oh my God, everything's going to pot and I have no clue what to do. And how many times do we do both? One or the other? Which one's getting precedence in our mind? So when we are praying affirmatively, when we are using mantras, we are protecting our mind, protecting our heart, protecting our body, protecting our world from falling into that condition of groveling to Pharaoh. We are affirming and asserting our strength and our power and our capacity to be the agents of change we wish to see in the world. And we are affirming for ourselves our individual worth and value. And there may be times when you think nobody else is doing that except for you. Well, that's a good news, because you have a majority of one. It only takes one. And you're the one. So this week, as we go about our work of growing and being our wonderful, unique, wonderful selves in the world, our homework is to say that. If there's something that you need to say it even if your voice quakes. And the other side of that coin, step 2, listen. One of the great attributes of the throat chakra is the capacity to deeply listen. You probably know people who are not very skillful at this. Listening is hard work. Sometimes you have to hear things you don't want to hear. Well, listen anyway. And sometimes you'll hear things you don't understand, and if that's the case, then ask a clarifying question. And the clarifying question might be directed at yourself. Have I just made an assumption about what somebody means and assume it's true? I've had any number of conversations with people. They've said things, and I've heard and interpreted them in such a manner that was not what was meant. This is especially easy to do if you're using texting or email. Especially easy. That's why I say email is the worst form of communication in mankind's history after text messaging. So be willing to question your assumptions. If somebody says something you don't like or you don't understand, ask for a clarifying question. Because chances are they want to connect with you every bit as much as you want to connect with them. And third thing I invite you to do, you can't do it this week unless you do it early, vote. Voting is a form of opening and engaging our throat chakra. It is a form of communication, it is a form of connection, and it is a form of creation. And in order to do so effectively, I encourage you, don't just look at what your preferred party's stance is. Read about the candidates yourself. Read about the issues. I know there have been many times I've gone in to vote and I see like these other things, these initiatives and whatnot that actually, since they're on my ballot, impact me because I live here. So if I want to be a co-creator in the world in which I live, it might make good sense to know what those things are about so I can engage and connect and communicate my decision. So anyway, I might give you a reminder of this particular point next Sunday. Or this Sunday. Tuesday. It is this Tuesday. I'm a week behind. Thank you. So well done. I won't remind you of this next week. We'll all pat ourselves on the back for exercising our rights and liberties, engaging. So that's what I would ask you to do. Speak your peace even though your voice quakes. Be willing to deeply listen. Pray affirmatively for what you do want, not what you don't want. And vote. Peace be with you, and namaste.